Federal Drive is presented by GEHA, Government Employees Health Association, proudly providing health and dental benefits to federal employees and their families. Visit GEHA.com.
The Department of the Navy is one of the biggest users of the Defense Department's AI.mil platform. The Navy designated the generative artificial intelligence tool as an enterprise service in just 5 days after evaluating it. It also told all employees to use it for controlled unclassified information and impact level 5 data by April 30th, or yesterday. But just giving sailors, Marines, and civilians access to the large language models and saying use it without any training is not a recipe for success. For more on how the Department of the Navy is ensuring its employees are gaining real benefits from AI tools, Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller, joins me now. Jason, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Terry.
Hey, if folks aren't familiar with the DoD GenAI.mil platform, give us a little bit of background about it and why it's so popular.
DoD introduced the GenAI.mil platform back in December. First, it was just with Google Gemini as really the main large language model that they were using. But soon DoD expanded it to include xAI's Grok and soon OpenAI's ChatGPT. So obviously adding more models, more tools to that. Now, currently, DoD says about 3 million service members and civilians currently can access GenAI.mil. The platform is being used by about 1.3 million or so people every day. So a lot of uptick in terms of use in just a short amount of time. Now, every service, most defense agencies have adopted the GenAI.mil platform and made it really their what they call preferred enterprise-wide AI platform. Going back to the Navy, they made it obviously an enterprise service, meaning, hey, this is the one you should be used. Now, among the tools the GenAI.mil platform provides are conversational chat interface, the ability to upload files, the use of what they call a RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, for everything from sourcing answers from documents you provide the AI tools to secured web grounding to deep research. And it allows users to really organize conversations that have, if you will, persistent chat history. So, Terry, if you and I talk every day, it can organize our conversations. So, oh yeah, I remember I told you last week I'd get you that thing. So it's really it's automating a lot of those mundane tasks, but also for deeper research.
Beyond just putting it out there and telling people to use it, how is the Navy preparing people or setting guardrails?
Exactly. If you just say build it and hope people will come, as we know that never works well with technology, especially when you talk about this emerging technology where, hey, not everyone's familiar with AI tools, especially generative AI tools. Now, the Navy, to that end, issued a memo back in March. They're saying, hey, here's a bunch of free AI training resources that are available across DoD. Everything from, hey, we have GenAI.mil training to naval-based LinkedIn learning to Google skills training, because then Gemini was one of the first platforms available. Justin Finelli is the Navy's chief technology officer. He signed this memo and says users must really understand how to use AI from different perspectives.
There's individualized AI and there's institutionalized AI in terms of the functions, in terms of how you use it, in terms of use cases. And institutionalized is your better bang for the buck, but individualized, you need people using it to get to level 2 and level 3.
The Navy told sailors, Marine civilians to log on to GenAI.mil, complete at least one free training course within 30 days, and then, hey, begin tracking the impact, begin tracking savings, and then put those results that you found in what they call their DON AI Efficiency Challenge tracking system and share your success stories. Now, Finelli, speaking at the recent Sea Air Space Conference, says there's been a lot of excitement over applying AI tools to the Navy mission areas. So this memo really is a result of that demand for training, the demand to use those tools more effectively. He says the DON needed to provide some sort of accelerated path for training around AI. So the Chief Information Officer's office goes to really remove friction around AI. And what he says, create a path for sailors, Marines, and civilians really to run down toward the AI tools. Now, it's been also very helpful for across the Navy that senior leaders from the secretary on down have really been leaning in forward on saying, hey, use these AI tools.
It's fascinating that they are trying to measure the impact of AI tools and capabilities. How are they doing that? What kind of guidance have they provided?
Terry, that's really the main parts of this memo. Yeah, hey, here's a list of free training is always nice. But really, it's what's the impact that this training is causing? How are you saying, hey, I took this training and now the outcome is better? Now, I think really they're running several different things. One is a structured challenge of AI use cases to measure the impact. And in fact, the memo lays out the goal of measuring 5 outcomes from AI use cases, But Finelli says the common denominator across all those 5 outcomes-based metrics is really time saved.
At a minimum, we should be getting something back. And as it turns out, as we suspected, for every use case, some are more fruitful, more impactful than others. And so we just wanted to do that in the open and shared. So we put that out. We got 300 entries like the first day. We're in the many hundreds now. And we have ultimately kind of lists of or groups of unleashed champions who are then collaborating within our dashboard and within the larger scoreboard. Here is the highest impact use case. Here's how we scale those as kind of enterprise things that everyone can use. And we're going to raise that up at the institutional level next.
Finelli says the Navy already is measuring the savings in millions of hours saved without losing any effectiveness in just the first few months of the widespread use of the AI tools. Finelli says as well that, these are very well-known metrics across industry. He says a lot of them are used to evaluate the technology itself, basically the idea of what are the outcomes for the effort that you're putting into the technology. He says now they're just applying really a lot of these same concepts to AI. So they're not these brand new metrics that they just ginned up over because, oh, look, now it's AI. They're taking something that already exists, that's already well accepted, and say, okay, how can we apply it to AI? I think that's really what's new. The Navy's memo outlines the steps for mission and business owners to follow, like establish baselines without AI, track the performance, like time to completion when using AI tools compared to not using AI tools, evaluate the quality of the work. This is really important because the Navy says time savings without quality maintenance is not true efficiency, and I think that's a really good reminder in the memo. The other things the Navy is doing is using gamification and hackathons as part of this effort, creating a collaboration room online to bring people together with similar interests. Finelli says the Navy is teaming up also with the Defense Innovation Unit on a structured challenge. The Marine Corps, as an example, rolled out an innovation challenge where they're asking Marines at the edge to tee up their highest impact activities and send them forward. Marines are also being given bonuses for their ideas that have the most impact. So not only are you saying, hey, here's a challenge, but hey, here's a little extra incentive to come up with these ideas and to show us how they're making an impact. Finelli says over the last few months, the Don will roll out a scorecard to monitor progress of these use cases as a way for to help them to decide which use cases are ready to expand to more users.
This sounds like a fascinating enterprise-wide approach across the whole Navy, but it also doesn't sound like it's necessarily unique to the Navy. Could anybody take a similar approach?
Terry, you're absolutely right. Finelli says the Navy's approach really is just based on best practices they're seeing across not just the government, but really industry itself. The Navy already is sharing a lot of these initial lessons learned and their approaches with other agencies to demonstrate how they're collaborating and scaling AI tools. And let's just take the Coast Guard as an example. They're taking a very similar approach based on those industry best practices, those metrics, especially time saved. At Sea Airspace, Brian Campo, the Coast Guard's chief data and AI officer, says the service set up a transformation office in 2025, developed an automation plan. Now, he says after a few minor studies, some analysis, they came up with a metric called minutes on mission. Now, Campo says the Coast Guard has 3 related metrics.
We look at how quickly we can get that capability out. So how quickly can we give an automation to somebody? We're thinking about how can we scale that out to more than one. So that's a second dimension. But the only one that we really care about is minutes on mission. And so how has that automation, how has that function, how has that transformation, how has that put that person closer to the mission? How has it created more opportunities for that person to be in the mission? And how has that function created more operational capability, things that we didn't even think about before?
Campo says the Coast Guard estimates that between 30% and 50% of any one person's day is really taken up by administrative tasks. And of those administrative tasks, they believe 50% to 70% of them can be automated.
We think we can put 15 to 20% of people's time that is not the mission they signed up for. It's not the reason why they joined the Coast Guard. It's not the thing that they're passionate about. We can take 15 to 20% of their day and put it back into minutes on mission. And that is truly what we're trying to figure out is what are those outcomes?
Now, Terry, this is just one example of the Coast Guard, kind of looking at their metrics, saying, how can we measure the impact? I think really what the goal here from the Navy, the Coast Guard, no matter who it is not just to make, hey, let's use AI because it's the shiny object. It's really how it's impacting outcomes and how to measure those outcomes of your mission. And I think that's really what this Navy memo, what the Coast Guard efforts are really trying to get to.
That's Federal News Network's executive editor, Jason Miller. Jason, thanks so much for sharing this exciting progress with us.
Well, my pleasure, Terry.
You can find his story at federalnewsnetwork.com.